Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to the No Name Music Cast. My name's Tim, and this is
Joy.
And we're coming to you on a Sunday night. Now, normally you would be listening to us on a Wednesday or a Thursday, depending on wherever you are in the world. But we're recording on a Sunday, which is an unusual night for us to record. It just worked out like that. Joy and I were having some fabulous banter before we recorded. We just hit record and play to start the show. And then my internet started playing up. So I've restarted everything. So please keep your fingers crossed that this is a problem-free recording.
There was one episode where poor Tim, my internet kept going out, and Tim literally skipped over probably 30 seconds. Internet blips. We don't talk about it. Those were the dark days.
Yeah, it was a challenging edit, shall we say? But I mean, often there's a little behind the scenes thing. Often we do a straight through record that has no edits in it at all.
Us and Whitney Houston, that first record, Tim.
Exactly, but sometimes you have to make a little edit here and a little edit there, and I'm hoping it's not too obvious when I do the edits. But there you go.
Who would have known, Tim? Shocking information.
Exactly.
Anyway, moving along.
Well, let's start the show with music news. Okay, so Joy, have you ever heard of the band U2?
I've heard of that guy Bono. Something like that. He doesn't know how to count.
Exactly. And, the drummer's fine and the edge is fine and Adam Clayton is fine and all that kind of stuff.
About a tree. I don't know.
Exactly. So they are going to be playing a residency in Vegas at a brand new venue called the Sphere. Now, is that something you've heard of?
No, but I have an image of it being like a spear, like physically.
Yeah.
Like a spear.
So it's very unique. As the name suggests, it's like a huge ball type structure, but it's an arena that holds, 40,000 people or something. And what's unique about it is it has a video screen all the way on the inside of this sphere, and it has a video screen all the way on the outside. So they've been running all kinds of stuff on the outside. They've made it look like Mars. They made it look like the moon. They made it look like a blinking eyeball.
All ball type things.
Yeah, made it like a ball and a sporting other kind of ball and all that.
Little bauble if you're in the UK on Christmas tree.
Yeah. So said U2 are going to be opening that venue on September 29th, and they'll be playing a residency there at the Sphere. Now, as they're in town, they're actually shooting footage for the Sphere screens and also shooting a music video for a new song called Atomic City. Now, on Saturday, which was yesterday, which was September 16th, because you'll be getting this a few weeks in the future, they did a pop-up show in Fremont Street. Now, have you ever been to Vegas, Joy?
Yes. When I lived in Utah, we used to go across because Charles loves a good casino. We've only had one good night. I'm making good money, but yes, I have been to Vegas.
Yeah. And for those who don't know, there's really two parts of Vegas. There's the main Vegas Strip, which is what all the casinos are on, your MGM Grands, your Flamingos, and New York, and all that kind of stuff. It's like 6 miles long. And that's the main part of Vegas that most people would recognize as Vegas. Funny thing is, it actually isn't in the town of Las Vegas. It's in the town of Paradise, Nevada, but that's beside the point. But there is a downtown area, Fremont Street, which is actually in the town or city of Las Vegas. And they have a canopy down there, again, which has a big video screen on the inside. And when you see like old-timey videos of Vegas, it comes from Fremont Street. And in fact, there's a couple of Knight Rider episodes which are in Vegas. And again, it always comes from that Fremont Street type area. They have bands, free bands, typically in Fremont Street most weekends. And this weekend, they had U2 playing a concert, and it was a complete pop-up. Nobody knew of but everybody knew.
That never happens to me, Tim. It's always like that's a good, I don't know. Like, you know what I mean? Like, if it's a pop-up band for me, it's a band no one's ever, like, that would legitimately not happen to me. Would not happen. It
would be, I don't know, Ricky Martin or Aqua or something. It wouldn't be
No,
U2.
That would be above what I would get. I would get like this guy who picked up the guitar 3 days ago. I'd be like, just give it to me. I can do more chords than you. Anyway.
Well,
that'd be cool though.
Yeah, the interesting thing is they played the song. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. The original video was shot on Fremont Street before the Fremont Street Experience and the canopy went up. So
I've seen that video and now it makes sense. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so they were sort of going back to that. So I thought it was kind of cool. I saw some footage from it. It seemed great. There was some controversy that Larry Mullen Jr., the drummer, was no longer a part of U2 and he wasn't going to be part of this residency and he was no longer touring with the band. However, he was part of this video shoot. So the rumor mills are stirring whether Larry Mullen Jr. is actually fine and he's back in the band.
Well, if he's listening to this podcast, he can come talk next week. It's fine. We'll ask.
Exactly.
Me and Tim will get to the hard-cutting questions of Larry that I didn't know was a question until 10 minutes ago. No. I struggle with U2 because, like, I appreciate them as a band and I think they're great, but I also kind of find them as radio filler. It's a weird limbo land that I live with them.
I like the hits of U2, but I find that I don't know, that they have this
they're radio filler, Tim.
They just have a sort of self-importance about themselves, and it's just... I'll go back to that Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 25th anniversary concert where they were on stage with Bruce Springsteen and then Bono's going on about how he's saving the world and saving children and famine and poverty and all this kind of stuff. And then Bruce Springsteen comes up to Mike, and we're going to have fun tonight.
I mean, so here's where I think you're right. I think that's probably part of it because I knew who he was before as an American and a kid, like I knew Bono was trying to save Africa. Like that's what I knew. I know, and that sounds really bad because that sounds very first world problem-y. But I knew that long before I knew U2, so you're probably right. But I kind of put them in the camp of like radio filler. It makes me feel bad to say it because I feel like they're talented musicians. I'm sure their concerts are wonderful, but here nor there, I would love to see them as a pop-up if I wasn't expecting it because that'd be amazing. But they're kind of like the Red Hot Chili Peppers to me. They're just there.
Yeah, you know my thoughts on the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They have about 3 good songs, in my opinion.
That's how I feel about Pearl Jam. Let's move along before we insult any more people. Let's go to the next one, Tim.
All right, so the next music news. This is news that came out today. So the Rolling Stone co-founder, Jan Wenner, has been removed from the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame board after making some very controversial and terrible comments about people of color and women in music. Did you read that?
I saw headlines. I didn't want to click in it because it made me sad. I have a question for you, Tim, though, related to this. With the way news and things come out and how everyone knows everybody's business nowadays, if I were famous, I would shut my freaking mouth, regardless of what I think or what I feel. Do you not agree with that? Like, why do these people go and, like, people can record you now? Like, it will just all... I just don't get it, Tim. I don't get it. Like, I would be very quiet at all times.
I would agree. And also, this guy, I've never really heard of him up to now. But like he has a new book out called The Masters. And guess who the Masters are? Bob Dylan, Jerry Garcia, Mick Jagger, John Lennon, Bruce Springsteen, Pete Townsend, Bono. And guess what they are? All white men.
Wow, shocking. There's never been a person of color, Tim, that's a great musician who literally influenced every person you just listed. That was sarcasm, everybody. Don't come for the No Day Music Cast. I was joking.
Yeah, I mean... Equally, his views are wrong and terrible. But as you say, if you have a viewpoint which is wrong, just shut your mouth.
Now, I know I don't agree with him. I absolutely know whitewashing is a terrible thing that's happened across American culture, music, TV, everything, Tim. Literally everything. I get it. And I don't know how much of the UK, but I feel like it's probably a problem in the UK too. I could be wrong. But I feel like it was. We know what the Beatles did, right, Tim? We know. But it's like, just, like, I feel like it proves their point that you're more just stupid. Just shut up. I don't know how to say. Anyway, continue.
Well, the interesting thing is that across the music industry, people are actually very happy that he's out of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame because... I brought up Joe Bonamassa, who is a guitarist of note. He put on Twitter, because that is its name and it hasn't changed and it'll always be Twitter.
Of course.
He said, this man has done more to bring down the credibility of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame than anybody else. He's been punitive, elitist, and frankly kept an artist out of the hall over petty grudges and ego. This is a good thing.
Who's the artist he kept out of the hall? Do you know?
Well, there's lots of artists that have never been able to get in. Not necessarily...
there's no one specific, just the people of color.
But like, for example, Toto wasn't allowed to be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Kiss, Black Sabbath, Deep Purple. I mean, there's so many... there's like dozens and dozens and dozens of artists who just haven't got in. And as the more I read into it, it just comes down to that this dude had like a grudge with somebody or somebody's manager, and they just can't get in the hall.
And that's so silly. That is so weird to me, because what does it all come down to, Tim? We talked about on the episode, I did an episode a long time ago. You guys can find it. Tim might know the episode, but I did an episode on like weird things that weren't allowed to be played, like on the BBC, and like these weird things that they just held hostage that people couldn't get their, you know what I mean, Tim? Remember, like, and it's like, who, weirdly, when you give some people control, they just take advantage of it. And they just try to ban the books and stuff, Tim. I don't know. But you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just disgusting. That's what it is. Disgusting.
Exactly. Though I just thought of a great idea. You, me, Charlie, and maybe Hannah, we could go to Cleveland and go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Well, I think Hannah has to come. I think Charlie has to come because we've talked about them enough on the podcast. People need to know who they are. But I will call it vlogging the whole time just to annoy Charlie. Or I'm sorry, I will call it vlogging instead of vlogging the whole time because I say that. It drives him insane. But I feel like vlogging is a stupid word. So I'll say vlogging just to sound like an old boomer. Just to add emphasis there. Not that I care what boomers say or do. You guys are cool with us. But it drives Charlie to say, because I hate the word vlogging. I think it sounds stupid.
I've been to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame 2 or 3 times before, I think. Twice, 3 times maybe. But I think a no-name music cast field trip to Cleveland to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame would be a fabulous episode.
I mean, it's just Ohio. It's like we could do a weekend, right? Like you take Friday, you take Monday off, drive down there. We each get hotel rooms. It's fine. Then you go walk around, record ourselves. I think it'd be funny. I feel like also like people would really like to know more about Charlie and Hannah because me and you say the weirdest things that I'm sure they'd like to defend. Hannah really wants to tell people why she likes clapping songs, and Charlie wants to tell everyone he's not as melodramatic as I make him out to be. It's a good idea, Tim. I'm down for it.
There we are. We will figure this out. That sounds like an episode for the new year to me.
All right. I'm in. Let's go.
Excellent. All right. So that's all the music news. There was an interesting thing that came up on Twitter this week. And it's one of these things where, one of these, it's like the Twitter equivalent of one of those emails that you used to get, years ago. We get... You get to know you emails. It's like favorite this and favorite that and things you like and things you don't like.
1997 email-esque.
Yeah, so it's sort of it's still hanging around in the Twitter 2023 age. And it's one of these things, it's a list of things that you don't like that other people like. So I filled mine out and I asked Joy to fill hers out. So I'm going to reveal mine. So if you follow me on Twitter, you would have already seen this, but I'm interested to see what's on Joy's list. So this is my list of 10 things that I don't like that other people do like. Okay. So we have football, soccer, boomf, at the top of the list. And underneath that, I have sport in general. Now, if you know me, I do not like sport as a concept at all. Seems a lot of people love it, and good luck to you if you enjoy it. But to me, it seems pointless. But there we go. Cucumber.
Are the athletes of the century over here?
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway,
cucumber, which is the most disgusting fruit, vegetable, nasty smelling. The Greek would
disagree.
Horrible.
Anyway.
All right, and then I put films, and I had to qualify this. So I would say the medium of film as an art form is not necessarily something I terribly find appealing. There are maybe 30, possibly 40 films I really enjoy, Moonraker and Ghostbusters being one of them. But even then, the films I really like, I don't watch them often. It's a very occasional thing. But the thought of seeing a new film that lasts for 2.5 hours that I haven't seen before. It's just, I'd rather do anything else than do that.
Okay.
All right. Next one is rap music. As I've said to you before, I do not find rap music appealing. There's something
not shocking to any of our listeners.
There's something angry about it. It just doesn't sound good in my ears. If you love rap, enjoy yourself. But for me, it doesn't jive for me. It's going to make the last 20 albums of the 1001 albums you must hear before you die list a challenging listen, shall we say. But anyhow, there we go.
I'm glad you're persevering through, you know?
Of course. When I sign up for a challenge, I'll see it through to the end.
Even if I hate myself. All right, continue.
The other one would be whammy bars on guitars. I recently bought that green PRS, which has a whammy bar on it, thinking that it might be something fun to use. And then after playing guitar for 35 plus years and realizing I don't like whammy bars, why am I buying one now? And I didn't really get on with that guitar, and the whammy bar was probably part of it as well as the neck. But anyhow, I do not like whammy bars on guitars.
Okay.
Next one was meat. Obviously, I'm a vegetarian. Cooked carrot. Now, I like raw carrot in a salad. I like raw carrot to eat. But there's something about cooked carrot, especially sliced carrot that you get in a can, that is disgusting.
Charlie would agree with you because he hates cooked vegetables in general. There's very few, besides like potatoes, which is kind of like a starchy kind of vegetable. It's different. But most veggies, he likes them. Like, I love a good, like, peppers and onions sauteed or a mushroom or whatever. Chad would rather just have them raw. He prefers the crunch.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, most cooked. I mean, I like Brussels sprouts. I really love Brussels sprouts.
I love a good beans. Broccoli.
Not too keen on peas, but they don't offend me. But there's something about the texture, flavor, and taste of a cooked carrot that's just bad.
It's interesting you said about peas, because I feel like peas are used a lot in UK food. I hate peas. I absolutely disgust them. They're not my thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have a small side of peas. Minty peas are horrible.
Oh, okay, I'm going to insult the people. Don't come for me, internet. If you ever put a minty pea on my plate, I'm done. I'm out. Absolutely not. All right, what's the next on the list?
Unsurprisingly, computer games.
Yeah.
Because I don't enjoy playing computer games, which is funny for somebody who works in IT. I'm very much in the minority seats in that respect.
I just find Tim the most un-IT person who happens to know a lot about IT. It's very weird. He fell into it. Like, I feel like someone just threw you in a pit one day, Tim, and eventually you figured it all out.
Yeah, it's just I think you're about right there.
It's a great description, right? Like, one day Tim was like, they're like, we could give you this job, but you got to figure it out. They kicked him over there. Tim's like, I'll figure it out. Now he knows.
Well, I just had a succession of office jobs I didn't terribly enjoy, and I kind of blagged my way into an IT job, and there you go. And 20 years later, here we still are.
All right. He's the manager now, so he did something right. All right, moving along.
The other thing is boat travel. Now, as everybody knows, I get very seasick, and I like the idea of being on a boat. I think it's very appealing. I like nothing more than cruising along in a boat. I think it would be fabulous. But 2 seconds on a bobbing about boat, and I just want to throw up everywhere.
I love a boat, so I don't know what to tell you, Tim. This seems like a personal problem.
Yeah, I like those land boats. When you get like a great boat and it's on the land, it's fabulous.
Is that what you call your car, a land boat?
Well, it's funny. Whenever like Hannah and I are out somewhere and someone has a boat, like, you know, in the trailer thing outside their house, I say, oh, look, it's one of those great land boats. Look how beautiful that land boat is.
I mean, technically, yes. My dad's from Louisiana, and he grew up on like oil rigs and like boats and stuff. So for me, like, I've been on boats many times with him. So that's a weird one to me, but I also understand. Like I said on that one episode, if you are doing like a bachelorette party or some type of event where you know people are going to be drinking, do not plan a boat trip the next day.
Yes.
I see people do that, and that's just mean.
That is a life lesson for you.
Yeah. Anyway, what's next on your list, Tim?
Well, that was 10 things, and then I was just a little bit cheeky, and then I said lists that are limited to 10 items.
Of course you did. Insert eye roll. Very on brand for Tim. All right. So he gave me a list, And my first one is, and I feel guilty saying this because this is something, Tim, I want to like. I even went to Greece and thought, oh, when I get to Greece, I'm going to like this. I hate olives. Hate them. And I hate blue cheese. The blue cheese is not on my list. This is an additive. You guys are learning to the next round. I can't stand blue cheese. I think it's gross. I know that there are ways and like things you can do, whatever. I'm not, and I get it. It's like a fancy cheese. It's fine. If you love it, you love it. That's cool. But I'm not a blue cheese person. One time, though, I was walking through the K. Roger Kroger grocery store Tim's very familiar with, and they have free samples. And I am normally kind of grossed out by free samples. Like, I feel like it's weird. I don't want to put my hand in there. Mm-hmm. I've seen other people, but for some reason, these ones spoke to me, Tim, and I don't know why. And so I was like, I'm going to try one. And I thought it was one of those little mini peppers. Turns out it was an olive I'm not familiar with. I digress. And it was stuffed with blue cheese. Two things I absolutely can't stand. Guess who almost, like, literally threw up on the Kroger floor, died. So the person who was with me, old roommate of mine, this is years ago, he was like, he looked at me and I was like ready to just, I looked like I literally was going to get sick. I've never felt the dread. I'm like, why did I do that to myself? I don't know why. I thought it was a mini pepper, and I don't really like free samples because I find them kind of gross. Because if you've ever worked for a grocery store or something of the like, you know, people are grubby with their hands, Tim. They'll just they'll grab things and they're gross and people are grazers. I don't know why in this moment I thought that looks like a stuffed pepper. I'm going to eat it. Look, I still don't know why I thought that. Anyway, so back to my list. The second one is camping. Why are people obsessed with sleeping on the ground? I'd rather sleep in a hotel. I don't want to camp.
I've been camping 2 or 3 times in my life. And the very last time I went camping, I slept in my car and it was much warmer and more comfortable, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, I mean, I can see why some people like to, you know, quote unquote, get back to nature and all that weird stuff. But I would prefer to be in a cheap hotel. I'm just not I want to be an outdoorsy person, organic and all these. I'm not, though, Tim. I'm just not. And if you've ever struggled with back pain the way I have, and Tim has talked about back pain, and if you really had severe back pain, like that put you in the hospital like I've had, sleep on the ground once. You ain't doing that. I blurted the word there, but you know what word I said. Exactly.
Like, I'm not doing it, Tim. I just don't want to. The other thing is if you ever want to know what my kryptonite is and try to take me out in the world, it's styrofoam. The sound of styrofoam, the feel of anything styrofoam related makes me want to throw up. I hate it. I cringe.
Styrofoam, or as known in the UK, polystyrene.
Whatever it is, I hate it. I don't know if it's like my subconscious knows it's really bad for the environment because it's like the worst thing, but I can't. Tim, like you know how every package you get with a package from Amazon is full of styrofoam? I have to walk out of the room. It's that bad. I can't take it. Yeah,
because it makes your teeth go on edge almost. That kind of screechiness. I get that.
Yeah, I can't. Styrofoam's the one. Non-chocolate candy. So I do not have a sweet tooth. I just hit my thing, everybody. I got aggressive with the sweet tooth. But I do like gummy bears, Haribo ones, of course, and gummy worms. But outside of that, if it's not chocolate, I don't want it. I don't like Skittles. I don't like any of that. I just don't.
Don't you find they're just over sweet?
It's sweet, it's fake, it's artificial. There's just something about it I just don't want. If you're going to give me candy, make sure it's chocolate, everybody. And
just to confirm, where are you keeping your chocolate? In the cupboard or the fridge?
The fridge. Ah! But anyway, so the next one is another one that's going to make Tim mad. I don't like Star Wars.
Well, if I'm being honest with you, I've gone off Star Wars.
Fair.
I saw Star Wars when it came out in 1970. Well, it came out in February 78 in the UK. I saw it very shortly after that, and I saw it in Hounslow West in I think it's the Regal that was there, or I think it's the Odeon, actually.
Yeah.
And I was 3 years old when I saw it, and I'm very lucky that I saw it very early on. I loved it. I loved the 2 sequels. Empire Strikes Back, of course, is great. I always loved the holiday special. I liked the first Disney film they came out with, and I liked Rogue One. But the second one they came out with, the Last Starfighter or the Last Jedi or whatever it was called, when they had Princess Leia flying through the air like Superman, and it was just weird, and I was like, I'm done with this. Done. Shut it down. Done.
To be fair, I have the attention span of no one. Like, my attention span is about 2 to 3 minutes, which I credit to being in music, Tim, because how many songs are 2 to 3 minutes long? Let's be honest. That's what I think it is. I can't focus long enough to process movies. Like, in Harry Potter, I could because I read the books, right? And I was dedicated to the books and I took my time on the book. But Star Wars, it's just a no. And I know there's many people who made, like, you know, Star Wars and Harry Potter are the same movie and just in different ways. I get it. But if you're going to go there, all those tropes are the same over and over again in everything, Tim. It's not just Star Wars and Harry Potter. How many tropes out there are there of one guy who happens to have all these powers he didn't know he had, and now he has to save the world? That's like in 74 movies.
Yeah, but I mean, you know, Star Wars started that whole space opera thing back in 77. I mean, it was the beginning of that. And as I can tell you, as somebody who was, you know, under 5 years old at the time, it was absolutely amazing. And it was all the way amazing all the way through my younger years. And it was only when Disney got it and they just milked it and milked it and milked it. And then they got that Rian Johnson involved who made that film that I hated so much. And it's just like, it's done.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just not for me. It never has been. But if you enjoy it, you love it, do what you're going to do. I'm just not a Star Wars person. Now, the next one is not going to come as shock to anyone who knows me, but I hate early mornings. I need my sleep, Tim. If I have less than 9 hours of sleep, everybody in this house is going to have a rough day. I also struggle with bruxism. So, like, I grind my teeth and I have to wear a mouth guard. So I think, like, I don't get good quality sleep. But if you have to wake me up before 6 a.m., Lord help you. I'm just not a morning person.
Well, fun fact, I wear a mouth guard too, because I also grind my teeth in my sleep. So there you go.
So Tim's not getting good quality sleep either.
But I will tell you, I live with somebody who is not a morning person either. And that person I live with also needs lots and lots and lots of sleep. And that person also is the kind of person like you who probably sleeps to the very last minute on some kind of calculation that if you leave
at
7 minutes to 9, I have a 5-minute commute and then I'll be at my desk.
I'll be with a meeting at 9 a.m. and he's like, Joy woke up 3 minutes ago. I know it. I can see it in my eyes. I cut him off, but he knew what I was talking about. But no, I understand Hannah's pain. But the thing is also, women need more sleep. It's science, Tim. There's science behind it.
There we are.
Google that later. Women need more sleep than men. And being a woman already sucks enough. Now we need more sleep too. Anyway, so the next one is things I hate. Melodramatic medical shows like Grey's Anatomy. I hate that stuff. I hate it so much. Anger in me films. I don't know what it is, Tim. Like, it's just because, first of all, it's romanticized. Like, that is not what ERs are like. If you've ever worked with medical staff at all, Tim knows he works with medical staff. That's not what it's like at all. Not even a little bit. I hate metal. And it also could be because my mother forced me to watch ER growing up, and I was not a fan.
I used to watch a UK show called Casualty. Have you ever seen that?
It's probably the UK version of ER, but no.
It's the same kind of idea where it's based in a ER, whatever they call it, accident and emergency department, and drama ensues, etc., etc.
It's just a soap opera put in a medical facility. That's all it is.
Yeah.
That's all it comes down to. And I just hate it. So anyway, number 8 is carrot cake. If you give me a cake and it has a vegetable in it, what's the point?
Well, controversially, even though I don't like cooked carrot, I actually like carrot cake.
Rude. I also hate whipped icing. Like, if I want cake, I want real butter. Like, Tim, here's my thought process on this. And this could be skewed. But if I'm eating a cake, I'm already making the conscious decision to have sugar, calories, and things I don't need, right? Artificial nonsense. Give me the real thing. I don't want a cake kind of like designed to be a healthy cake. Like, just give me the real thing at that point.
Yeah, I find that US cakes, that they have that oversweet, sickly icing.
Give it to me.
Yeah, and I just find it's like, ugh.
Fine. I know we have problems in America with our food. But I mean, the thing is, if I make it, because I will say Tim, and Tim has been with me when we've ate multiple parties. I want that I'll ask for like a tiny slither. Like I don't want a huge piece. I just want a tiny slither of the real stuff, and that's all I need. But like carrot cake is fine, but like I just don't want it. Never. I also, and this is very controversial, I didn't put it on the list, Tim, I don't care for cheesecake. I don't.
Incredibly controversial. I love cheesecake.
I'm here for that buttercream American paint your mouth blue thing. All right, number 9 is hiking, which goes back to my camping thing. Like, I like walking, I like going for walks, but like, I don't want to spend my day hiking up a mountain. I just don't. I don't care what the end goal is. Like, I'm going to be miserable the entire time. And like, I fell many times hiking. So that's a whole thing. But like take me for I went for a 3-mile walk yesterday with my friends. I shared a picture on Facebook, Tim. I'm sure you saw it with my dog. That's one thing, but I don't want to hike mountains. I just don't. I don't find it fun. Yeah,
I've done some hiking. I've hiked the peaks of Otter. I've hiked McAfee's Knob and a few other places like that. It's Grandfather Mountain. There's a bit where you hike all the way up to the top. I've done that. It's fun, I suppose, and the view is really nice when you get up there. But I think for you, Joy, because you're somebody who's prone to injuries and accidents, and if there was some kind of hiking trip, I don't think I'd even allow you to go on it.
Well, my best friend Molly, that's how I met her, falling down a mountain. And I don't know if you know this, Tim, but there's like a frisbee golf place around here. It's like near where the Montgomery Animal Shelter is, like Sunshine, Golden, whatever. Mm-hmm. So that frisbee golf place is a death trap. And there was one, say this is so embarrassing. There's one hole where like it's straight down the mountain. So me and all my friends went. I didn't know I was literally going to be hiking up a mountain. Was not dressed for this situation. Nobody set me up for this. But it was like straight down. It had been like raining recently, so it was super muddy. Of course, I fell all the way down. I mean, I'm talking like a good 10 feet. Fell, rolled myself down that. At the top of the thing, there's like a thing where people can sit, like, you know what I mean, waiting for people to get through their hole. About 4 frat boys from Virginia Tech were sitting at that. Watch me roll myself all the way down that hill. I've never been more embarrassed and in more pain in my entire life. So,
oh dear,
this is why I don't like hiking. Okay, finally, so we can actually get into the topic of this episode. Mine is My last one is Napoleon Dynamite, the movie. I thought it was terrible. I don't want to watch it. Don't care for it.
Well, I've actually seen that film.
I knew you were going to say that.
Many times, vote for Pedro and all that stuff.
Hate it just
and the dance scene to Jamiroquai's Canned Heat.
No, Tim.
and Tina, eat your ham.
All right, move along. But that's my last one, Napoleon Dynamite. I may have put that on there as a little gem to Tim, but moving along, everybody. I never liked that movie.
Well, there we are. We will follow this up next week, I think. I'm going to send Joy the list of 10 things that I really like. And I think next week we will balance this out with 10 things that we both like. There we are.
We should probably get into the actual topic of the episode because it's a long one. There's a lot there to uncover.
Absolutely. Okay, so this week's topic, it's my turn to pick the topic. And this is something that Joy has done before, but I'm taking a slightly different kind of lead on it. Yeah, approach to it, if you will. So Joy did a whole episode about the Now That's What I Call Music series. And that was a great episode. But I found on Spotify recently that somebody has made playlists for all the original Now That's What I Call Music albums, the UK issues. Now, I'm not talking about the Now That's What I Call Reggae or Now That's What I Call Summer Music and all the kind of offshoots, or the US series. I'm talking about the original UK series that came out in 1983 and then, 2 a year or 3 a year from there onwards. So I thought it'd be interesting to go back and listen to Now That's What I Call Music, the very first one of this series. And I did. I listened to it on one of my walks, and I listened to it at work too. So I was getting pretty familiar with it. And I thought it'd be interesting to do an episode just about that one album and see what artists were on there. Joy and I can pick songs and go backwards and forwards and see where it goes from there. So the original Now That's What I Call Music, I'm not going to go into the full ins and outs of it because we've covered that on that previous episode. It came out on 28th of November, 1983. It was on record and it was on cassette. And then they came out with a CD version of it in 2009. And there were some slightly different mixes of it and stuff like that. And they did a record store day pressing of it in 2018, and it was remastered and all this kind of stuff. But for your casual listener, if you go on Spotify and put Now That's What I Call Music, you'll be able to pull up the list. And in fact, when I post this episode up on Buzzsprout, I will put a link to the Spotify playlist. So if you wanted to go and give it a listen after the fact, you can.
Of course.
So what I'm going to do is going to go through all the tracks. The two sides, one has 16 on it and tracks on it, and one has 14 tracks on it. I'm just going to pull songs off. We'll have a chat. Joy can pull songs off, and we'll just go backwards and forwards and see what happens. So I think the first one that I'm going to pick out, where are we? Casey and the Sunshine Band with their song Give It Up.
Yeah. So Casey and the Sunshine Band is one of those people that I associate with like 3 songs. I'm not going to lie. I don't really have to tell everybody what 3 songs it is. But like, it's pretty obvious. But I mean, this whole album was very upbeat to me. So it's not shocking that this made it. It's disco, classic disco.
Yeah, I've listened up to Now That's What I Call Music Volume 3, and Volume 3 is a lot more down than this. But you're right. This one is very up. All of these songs are really sort of fun songs.
That's what I got from it. It all seemed very, which it kind of makes sense because it's the first one. Like you want to just kind of like, well, and all the other ones tend to be what's popular at that moment, right? That was their thing. But I feel like every song on this, but yeah, I mean, I associate Casey, it's post-disco, I guess, because it's 83. What was the whole thing? Burning all the disco things in like 1980, I guess? 1980.
It was 70s. It was late 70s, all this thing against disco music.
I love disco, as we said many times. But I also think that is probably hindsight. You know what I mean? Everybody loves disco now, but I also understand how people... But Casey and the Sunshine Band's also kind of like a funk band. In a weird way.
That's true. And as I've said before, I have a very vivid memory of Casey and the Sunshine Band's Give It Up on a holiday I took on the Isle of Wight when I was very much younger. And
that's true.
They made that boom, boom, boom. The synth line at the beginning begins, just takes me back there to Chiltern Chimes. Boom.
I also think did you have a band in the mid 90s, early 2000s that was Casey? What were they called? Not Casey and Sunshine, but the one who did all the romantic music, Casey and Casey and dang it, it's gonna kill Casey and JoJo. Do you remember that, Tim?
It's a name I've heard of, but I'm not super familiar with that.
Very different, everybody. It was like an R&B duo from the mid 2000s that did like every song that was playing on like every school dance that I went to. So every time I hear Casey, I will say I'm guilty of either thinking Casey and the Sunshine Band or Casey and JoJo. Very different people. But I mean, that I don't know. I feel like Casey and the Sunshine Band one of those bands that's got like 47,000 members and that keep renewing them and do different concerts even though they're all dead?
I think so. I think there's a core to Casey and the Sunshine Band. Again, the logistics of that makes no sense to me financially. I don't know how that works.
See, like, I mean, let's think about it. It's Boogeyman, Boogie Shoes, Take Your Body Down to the Ground, right? It doesn't take it's fun, but it doesn't take like skilled musicians to perform those songs. I don't feel. Well,
they have a very tight horn section.
I mean, that is true. And that is like their signature thing. You're right about that.
Yeah, and I know there's kind of a funk and a groove to it. I think you'd have to have a very competent drummer and bass player who've got some groove about them.
Yeah, but I don't think like it'd be that hard to find because they're common songs that everybody who's like, if you're a horn player or you're like a bass player, wouldn't you want to learn those songs?
You would think so, but I would not discredit the Sunshine Band.
Tim's like, don't let the Sunshine Band fans come get you, Joy.
I believe that the Sunshine Band are in cahoots with Don Henley. Just putting that out there.
Okay, fair. I'm not insulting them. I think their songs are great. But what I'm saying is I feel like it's songs that a lot of musicians would know.
There we are. There we go. All right. Well, what's the song that you're going to pick from this? Now that's what I call music.
I'm going to pick the first one. And the only reason I'm going to pick the first one is I have a specific thing I want to talk to Tim about. So You Can't Hurry Love by Phil Collins, right? Which everybody knows. By the way, I have two stories, though. So recently I shared a thing about Roger Waters and Phil Collins. So for those who don't know about Roger Waters, he kind of comes off as a grumpy old man. I could be wrong, but anyway. So I did a little research. So basically, from Pink Floyd, he talked about there's a difference between a rock star and rock and roll, and like it's kind of putting a lot of precedence on like what defines a rock star. And he insulted Phil Collins along the way, which is obviously a no-go for me and Tim. But on the flip side, I also did a little Googling, and he's just a mean man.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, like you get people like Brian May, and you get people like Dave Grohl, and you get people even like people who've bumped into Elton John and stuff like that. And you hear good experiences. Paul McCartney, people say, oh, we bumped into Paul McCartney, had a great chat, and all this kind of stuff. You never ever hear that about Roger Waters.
So I went on like Reddit and Quora and all those things where people kind of like chime in about this person. And literally, I'm not going to read all of it because some of them have bad words. But basically, so the question was, is it true that Roger Waters from Pink Floyd is a total jerk? Blah, blah, right? Every single one of them, he's been a total jerk blank his whole life. Yes, part of it is just his personality. And then it's like, for the record, and it just keeps going. And everybody's just like, basically like, he's just not a nice dude. But my thing is, Tim, is who's right? I don't feel like anyone has the right to define what makes someone rock and roll. Because the whole thing about rock and roll is it's about freedom and creation and happiness and like expressing yourself. So like the concept of him saying what is, so basically, for those who are listening, he put out this thing saying that he doesn't think Phil Collins is rock and roll, and there's like a whole piece behind it. But in my mind, I think there's genres there, like, you've got your psychedelics and you've got like your true kind of rock and roll, and then you've got kind of like hair bands. But like, who is he to define anything, Tim?
Yeah, I mean, rock and roll in its earliest form is blues bass, fast blues bass music. And, you could say Chuck Berry is original rock and roll. Jerry Lee Lewis is original rock and roll. But as the years have moved on, it's defines not so much a music genre, it's like a spirit, it's an attitude, which is why the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, going back to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, has rap music in there. It has modern R&B music in there. It's because they feel that rock and roll defines an attitude, not necessarily a genre.
But Phil Collins, Tim, like of all the people,
Phil Collins is as rock and roll as you like. I mean, he was in Genesis, solo singer. He was on Miami Vice.
You're going to take a push out like Phil Collins.
Yeah, I mean, how many hit singles has Roger Waters had as a solo artist against Phil Collins? And tell me who the rock and roll star is out of those two.
I just can't even imagine. And like Phil Collins seems like such a nice guy. I've literally never heard anything negative about him as a person. Like for someone to like take shots at Phil Collins just says like, no, thank you. No, thank you, sir.
I don't get that. And especially if Phil's really struggling with his health. He can't play anymore. He can't tour anymore. He can barely walk, poor fella. I mean, don't take pot shots at Phil. He's a legend.
Also, I don't care what anyone says. If you didn't write the Tarzan soundtrack, it did not have to go that hard. It went so hard. If you did not write it, I don't want to hear it. So anyway, that's the only reason I chose that song, Tim. All right, what's next?
Okay, so I'm going to go with a song which is towards the end of side one. And this is by the Rock Steady Crew. And this is the song, Hey You, the Rock Steady Crew. And what's interesting about this is very early hip hop. Sort of. I mean, it's the musicianship is like pop of the day, really. But it was one of those songs at the very cusp of hip hop. And the video had people, spinning on their head and doing all that kind of body popping and all that kind of stuff from back then. What would they call it? Break dancing. That's the word I'm looking for. Break dancing.
Do you know where break dancing comes from, Tim? So supposedly, this is going to sound really bad. I've never confirmed or denied this, but supposedly it is I used to always joke that if I did it, I would break a hip. That's where breakdancing came from. Mm-hmm. But it's also supposed to be from physically doing things that required physical activity. And so they would see each other I don't want to say replacing the hubcaps on a car. And then they would see each other the physical mechanicism behind that. And that's how they would start reflecting it and dance. There you go, Tim, everybody. But if I did it, I would just break my back. So,
yeah, I'm not going to let you do
that. Might be where break comes from, but I've heard that's also where break dancing comes from.
But I will say, musically, I really like this song. This is a peppy little song.
I mean, it's upbeat. It's fun. I don't know much about them as a band. They're American early '80s hip hop. I've seen the video.
Yeah, I know nothing about them other than I really like that song.
Okay, everybody, there we go. First, No Day Music Cast exclusive. Tim brought up the hip hop song before I did.
There we are.
That's all anybody's getting from this, I guess. All right, so I'll pick one that I hear all the time in my house because I'm married to Charles, and it is the Safety Dance, Men Without Hats.
An absolute classic. Now, I think we covered on a previous episode what a safety dance was.
I don't know. Did we? Maybe.
I think it's when you dance around with a high vis.
Yes, you did say that. Yeah. I mean, I just think of the music video where they're going around the medieval music video. That's all I see when I think of it. Now, I find it funny that they're the Men Without Hats because the lead singer, Ivan, whatever his name is, he's always wearing a hat.
Maybe he's the leader of the Men Without Hats, so he wears a hat, but the people who are following behind him do not wear hats.
Because they're from Canada, and I looked into this a lot because, they're new wave, synthetic pop kind of sound. We all know that. But, every time I see them pictured, this Ivan guy always has a hat. And I'm like, is it supposed to be ironic? Because I'm not getting it. What am I missing here?
It could be an ironic hat or an ironic name. Or maybe the other members just don't like wearing hats and they vetoed him when they were picking the name. It could be. And fun fact, I do not like wearing a hat.
I'm not a hat person either. My face doesn't look right with a hat.
No, it just makes my head sweat and it's uncomfortable. I will wear in winter, if it's super cold, I'll wear a little beanie, bobble hat type hat, cover my ears if it's freezing cold. But you see people around here wear baseball caps all year round in the summer heat, and that's not me.
I'm not a hat person. Now, I do laugh when I see people wear baseball hats or caps or whatever you want to call them, and they put them on backwards and then they're still covering their eyes from the sun. That does give me a good laugh. Yeah, and it also gets me people who wear caps backwards that are designed to be worn backwards, which makes no sense. Yeah, the world's weird, Tim. I don't know what to tell you. I just don't look right in a hat. I wear a hat and I look like George Washington. I'm not designed to wear a hat. And there's some people out there, men, women, doesn't matter. They, them, I don't care. They look really nice at hats. I'm not one of them. Yeah, me neither. I said you'll catch me in a hat in winter, and that's about all you're going to get. Yeah, there's some pictures of me last year when we went to New York. Tim will tell you I'm wearing a beanie. That's the extent of what you get. There we are. All right, moving along. What's your song, Tim? Okay, so this actually comes after your track of Men Without Hats on side one of That's What I Call Music. And this is Kajagoogoo, and this is the song Too Shy. Now, this is one of these songs, for me, really defines that era. It defines a time when I was at primary school.
getting into music, listening to the radio, etc., etc., and just the opening of that kind of funky bass line thing, I find it haunting in one way. And it also time travels me back to that era in another way. It's just, of the 80s pop generation, this is probably one of my favorite songs.
Okay, so this song is one of those bands that I forget exists every once in a while. Because I mean, Kajagoogoo is very, I would say, like kind of new sync. A lot of this is like synthetic pop from the 80s in this album, I will say. But I literally think, I don't know if I know who they are. Like, I know who they are, but I don't know who they are because they're electronic too. But the rhythm, to sha sha, hush hush, ah ah, goes through my head so often, and I forget who sings that. Like, that is like, even in America, Tim could tell you, you could turn the radio on right now. If you were on an 80s radio station, you'd find that song.
Yeah. Well, the singer famously is Lamal, and Lamal did the song Never Ending Story, which is probably another earworm that's stuck in your head. My
husband loves that, so yes. But that little, just like that, to sha sha, it literally just like, it's, I don't know, I've never heard a more like iconic kind of synthetic electronic like sound in the 80s that I feel like everybody knows.
Yeah, I wonder if Pino Palladino played bass on it, because it has that kind of fretless bass sound, and he was famous for that. And in fact, one of the other tracks, which I'll probably come on to, is Paul Young's Whenever I Lay My Hat, That's My Home. And he famously played fretless bass on that. And this song has a very similar kind of fretless bass sound on the beginning. So I wonder if it is Pino playing bass on that.
That was a conversation for Tim in and of itself, because I have no clue. Don't know the answer, everybody. he went through all of that and joined us not know. So you're saying fretless, like he doesn't play with frets at all? Like, what does that mean?
Well, you know, like an upright bass, like a double bass type thing, or a cello or something. You know, it doesn't have any frets on the fingerboard.
Oh, okay.
So it's very common that some musicians will have a fretless bass, where it's just like a regular electric bass guitar, 4-string or 5-string bass guitar, and it doesn't have any frets. And the idea being is you can go...
It gives more of that, almost like a cello sound.
Yeah. So like as I said, the example of the track, Wherever I Lay My Hat, That's My Home, which is another track which is on this album.
The Paul Young song.
Yeah, the Paul Young song. At the beginning it goes... That's Pino Palladino, who's a very famous session bass player who's played with everyone you could ever imagine, and he's played on
I've heard his name.
Songs, and he toured with The Who, all kinds of stuff. Okay. He famously played bass for Paul Young during that era, and his fretless bass work is heard all over that album, No Parlez, the Paul Young album.
Interesting, because it does, I mean... I guess it does give it a very more distinct kind of hollow sound. I don't know if hollow is the right word, but I definitely know growing up in Southwest Virginia, and Tim's well of this, cellos are very predominant in like the music we hear around here, and like what's the word, like bluegrass. So I grew up with a lot of people that were close to me that I knew who played like a cello or something of that longer, or a standing bass, whatever you want to call it. It almost reminds me of like people who play like you know, you got like the washboard, but like people who blow in like the moonshine jugs.
Yeah.
That's what it kind of reminds me of. That sounds really weird, but Google it later. You know what I mean? It's that kind of like almost engrossing sound. But I had never, until Tim just pointed it out to me, I wouldn't have known that was like a fretless bass. There you go, Tim. You taught me something. It wouldn't even dawned on me.
There we are. I've attempted to play fretless bass, and it always sounds a bit drunk because I'm not really... my intonation isn't good enough to play it.
I could be wrong, but I also feel like it would be really hard to know where your fingers should go. Like, I know what a G is, but I can feel like where the frets... Do you know what I'm saying, Tim? Like, I don't feel like I could handle that. Some
fretless basses are lined, where you would normally have the frets, they inlay a little wooden strip. So you know where they are. But I mean, if you're a skilled bass player, or especially someone who's familiar with fretless, you would know, you would feel it. And plus you'd hear it. You'd slide into the notes and you would feel it.
Fair enough. Like for me, that would be hard though. All right. Tim picked Too Shy, which I'm kind of sad because I kind of wanted to pick that, but that's okay.
There we are.
I mean, I'll just go classic. We'll just go good old Culture Club Carbon Chameleon because... You can't not have it, Tim.
I mean, loving would be easy if your colors were like my dreams. Red, gold, and green, red, gold, and dream. Every day is like survival. You're my lover, not my rival.
But I don't know a more like known song.
It's iconic from this era, and it's one of these songs that has transcended the generations. And you like if you go in CVS, which is like a drugstore we have here, which is like Boots in the UK, they always have music playing in the background, and you wouldn't be uncommon to hear Karma Chameleon playing in there.
And it's kind of ironic that somebody like Boy George. I mixed boy and George together when I was trying to say that. But it's kind of funny that Boy George, of like being such a unique person, has become like commercialized, right? Isn't that ironic in and of itself?
Yeah, I mean he sort of started that kind of look.
Yep.
I mean that
very
was pretty
androgynous.
Yeah, that was him. I mean, and it was, as I said at the time, he appeared in tabloid newspapers, terrible gutter press tabloid newspapers at the very beginning of his career, going, Boy George, is he a man or is he a woman? And it's just like, well, whatever.
But to be fair, like, I mean, I love his music, so who the heck cares?
Yeah.
But I just find it funny that he's become so commercial. So what I was looking at, Tim, is, I mean, everybody thinks of probably Karma Chameleon and Do You Really Want to Hurt Me? Mm-hmm. And I actually read, though, when I was looking at I was kind of doing some research about these songs so we could have a conversation. In 1983, this song was the top selling song in the UK. It sold 100.39 million copies, which is not shocking to me because, like I said, it plays everywhere. And it probably has been used in TV shows and music, and Do You Want to Hurt Me has probably been used even more because it insinuates something. But I just kind of funny that of all the people that like became such, he's kind of the opposite of what was popular at the moment.
And Karma Chameleon and Do You Want to Hurt Me are both featured in the A-Team episode Cowboy George.
So there's this, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Tim, or you've probably seen like headlines. There's a movie called like Without a Paddle, and it's buddy comedy at its core. They go on an adventure, right? And there's this one part where they fall into like a mine shaft, and there's people looking for them, and the guy's just sitting down there forever, and he can't get out. So he starts thinking, "Do you really want to hurt me?" And the guys that are looking for him show up, and they go, "Yes, we really want to hurt you." I thought that was such a funny line. I don't know why, because I could see that happening to me, Tim. Like if I were stuck in a mine shift for long enough, I could see myself start singing whatever. But I thought that was pretty witty. Anyway, there you go. So I went with Karma Chameleon because it's classic.
There we go. All right. Well, I'm going to go with track 4 from side 1. And this is Heaven 17 and the song Temptation. Now, is that a song that you was familiar with before you listened to this?
No, not even in the slightest. You could have said Heaven 17 to me and I would have no clue who they were. What I like about this song is it has almost like a Motown type feel to it, that kind of pounding. It's really kind of drives. I like it. I didn't know. I liked it. It's kind of sad to me. I've never heard it, but I feel like Heaven 17 is a very heavy UK band. I could be wrong, but I just don't know that they made it to America. Or I think you're probably right. I mean, a lot of this stuff is chart UK pop that was going on in the early 80s. And like we've said before, some of these acts cross the Atlantic, Culture Club being one of them, but a lot of these artists didn't and just didn't even make a dent. Now, the one song I do think I know from Heaven 17, I will say this, is the Who Will Stop the Rain. I have heard that song. Mm-hmm. That's the only song I know of Heaven 17. And I know they're kind of like synth pop, kind of 80s, whatever. But for some reason, I never heard this. But to Tim's credit, I really liked it hearing it. And I added it to my Spotify. So I will be listening to it again because it does really sound Motown, which is right up my alley. Yeah, it's like 80s electronic Motown. It has that feel about it. It's kind of weird to me, though, because why did the other songs that fall under these reigns make it, but this one didn't? You never know. Who can honestly say? Are they known? Like if you went into the UK and asked somebody Heaven 17, they know who you were talking about, or is it kind of like, what's the deal there, Tim?
I think at this point, I mean, I'm sure young people don't know who Heaven 17 are. I think they end up on these like 80s nostalgia tours with Bucks Fizz and Sunita and stuff like that.
Of course. That sounds very, yeah. All right. So I'm going to pick something from the second tape or side 2 or B-side or whatever they call it. I don't know. Depends on you got a tape, you got a record. But I'm going to go Candy Girl, New Edition.
Oh, classic. I mean, this has got such a peppy, happy sound to it. And this is the New Edition that does contain Bobby Brown. This is early New Edition. And I mean, if there was one song when you think about New Edition, you would think Candy Girl.
So, and speaking of I was playing on the Motown thing. I love Motown. I love Motown. I love Motown. And that's what they were going for in the early 80s. I feel like Boyz II Men was playing on that too, but New Edition played, they were just so good. And I mean, Cool It Now, Candy Girl. I love, what's the other one that I'm trying to think of? It doesn't matter. I love everything New Edition. It kind of bothers me that it's Bobby Brown because, like, I don't like him. But like we said, separate the music from the artists. Sometimes you just have to, because if you don't, you'll go crazy.
You will do. And of course, many would say that the best New Edition song is Count Me Out, which maybe is from a season 4 Knight Rider episode. I was
like, Minnie or Tim would say.
Let me tell you what I did Friday night. We were supposed to record Friday night. Joy couldn't record Friday night. So I follow this YouTube channel called the Knight Rider Historians. They have found the original trailer. You know, you didn't even really watch Knight Rider, but you know there's a black trailer with a chess piece logo on it and the car drives in it. There was one of those, one of one, and they found it. They found it rotting in New Mexico, and they're currently restoring it. And they also have found the tractor unit from seasons 3 and 4. So they are rebuilding the whole thing from scratch, making it screen accurate. And you know, they post YouTube videos and fundraisers and stuff like that. And they also own a couple of kit cars that are screen used too. And they're called the Knight Rider Historians. Well, I watched their content on YouTube and Friday night they had a live video. So what did I do at 7:30? I joined the historians for an hour and a half of geekery talking about Knight Rider stuff. And people were, it took me all the way back to Radio Freak Jam. So I hadn't done a live YouTube video since Radio Freak Jam. So it came on and it started, and they had the chat panel on the side, and everyone's checking in. Hey, how are you? Oh, hello from Austria. Hey, I'm from New Zealand. It's 3 a.m. Blah blah blah. It was beautiful, and I asked Joe Huth a question, and then he answered my question on screen. I mean, it was honestly, it was geekery personified.
Well, for those who don't know, I was sick last week, which is why I could not. But at least Tim got to have a fun week. But I'm on medicine and I'm fine now. So just in case anybody was wondering what that means, so that doesn't surprise me. I mean, how else were you supposed to spend your Friday night, really, Tim?
Yeah, well, really? we're a little low on the gigs at the moment. It's about 4 weeks of no gigs. We've been lucky all the way through the summer.
Weird time of year.
Yeah, all the way through the summer, we played every week or sometimes twice a week. It's very lucky. But you get to this point in the year, normally we're gigging now. But as I said, Mike, the other guitar player, likes college football. So he's got a lot of football matches he's going to go and see. Bill had some hospital thing going on, so he couldn't do this weekend. And then someone else is busy and someone's away. And he just, looking at the calendar, it's like, oh, yeah, Mike out, Bill out, Mike out, Bill out, Chris out. Oh, there you go. We can't play.
Yes. And for those who heard me typing while Tim was talking, it wasn't on purpose. I try to think of what that Bobby Brown, like a solo song was. It's my prerogative.
Oh, and you'll do what you want to do. Yes.
It's one of my favorites. Also, the Glee version is really good, too, if you didn't know. Because everybody is worried about that. I mean, I just thought it was interesting. New Edition seems like a band that probably was popular in the UK, too, as well. I was surprised it was on this album, though, because it's not really in line with the rest of the songs.
Yeah, it must have just been in the charts at the time. The other thing you have to realize with the Now That's What I Call Music series, certainly at the very beginning, it was only certain record companies would contribute to this. So some artists that were on different labels would not be on this compilation. And there were some other rival compilations at the time. There was called Monster Hits was another one. And there was a few others that were similar, but they never got the traction that Now did. And I think now in this era, they release these and it doesn't really matter what label they're on or whatever. But certainly this time was released on Virgin EMI, and you had to be on Virgin EMI or some label that was associated with them to get on this.
Which makes sense because, so for those who don't know, there was the UK version in like the 80s, early 90s, and then there was an American version that came later. I don't know what year it was, 2000 to like 1990s into 2000s. And the American version is kind of what I associate with now is what you call music because that's when I was growing up. I know this now because we've talked about it and researched it and stuff like that. But Virgin and EMI had a lot of the boy bands and the pop artists. And when I was like the Britney Spears and the Backstreet Boys and the NSYNCs of the world. And that's what you were seeing on those now. That's what I call music in the late 90s, early 2000s. So that makes sense. Yeah. Because Virgin kind of had all those pop artists back in the day.
They did. Well, Virgin was seen as like a hip record company because one of the first acts that they signed was the Sex Pistols.
Yeah.
And who were counterculture and all this stuff, and no one else would sign them, et cetera, et cetera. So that there's almost from the very outset, they had this kind of like hip and trendy type of, feel about them.
And what's so interesting is they were American based. I think like Richard Branson's American, but I feel like they were based in the UK originally.
No, so Richard Branson's British.
Is he really? I thought he was American this entire time.
Can you tell by his beard?
He does look British now that you say that. Well, it all makes sense, everybody. I thought Richard Branson was American, but I knew the country that like it was UK based, like as a company, but I always thought he was American. Maybe that's just the grandiose obsession with money that made me think he was American.
Maybe, though he does have a very interesting quote when he was setting up Virgin Atlantic and he was buying 747s. He said, "Do you know how you make a billionaire into a millionaire?" And they said, "No, Richard Branson." Says, "Start an airline."
That sounds about right. Why did I assume he was American? I just did. But now that I look at him, you're right. He does have British eyes and the beard.
British eyes.
British people are like, what the heck does that mean?
Do you know what I'm going to do for an episode? Is I'm going to flash up people you've never heard of, and I'm going to say US or UK, and you look into their eyes and you go, "Yes, he's from Slough," and I go, "Correct."
I want to do that so bad now. I really thought he was American, though I thought Virgin started in the UK, but I guess it all makes sense. There is an American version. So Charlie, back in the day, my husband used to work for, when he did IT support, it was for Virgin cell phones. And he used to talk about, they would get all these like little press briefings. It would just be Richard Branson talking to him every time.
The thing is, Virgin Mobile wasn't even a real mobile network. It's what they call one of those virtual networks. It's sat on top of, piggybacked on Sprint. It was Sprint service and Sprint towers. And I had Virgin Mobile when I first moved here, and it was terrible. So Sprint service was not good anyway, and it was like a not as good version of Sprint service. So
Tim's right, because, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Back in the day, so I grew up in Southwest Virginia, even before 10, and everything was CDMA. GSM was not heard of until probably 2012 at least. Now, Sprint was CDMA, but CDMA was dominated by US Cellular and then Verizon. Sprint was like the third best company. And then when you got Virgin, you were on the third best company, subtract 50% of the towers. Yeah, and you also had Nextel, which used a completely different technology, which wasn't CDMA or GSM. It was something completely different. And then Sprint merged with Nextel, and they retired Nextel and the Nextel technology. And then everyone turned CDMA off and then became GSM. It's weird how that works. Because, see, when I grew up in, I don't know how it was in the UK, Tim, but when I grew up in Southwest Virginia, CDMA was an East Coast thing. GSM was strictly West Coast. I didn't even know what GSM, I had no concept of a SIM card. So for those who don't know, SIM cards are GSM. You don't have a SIM card that runs between, well, you do now. Tim will tell you do now. But back in the day, we didn't have a SIM card. There was no dual SIMs. That this concept was not there. You had a phone, you put it on your, you know what I mean? When I first met my husband, he's like, you can switch SIM cards. That was a completely foreign concept to me. Didn't understand it at all.
the CDMA standard was mostly, in fact, it was only used, I think it was only used in the United States and a very small area of Japan. And towards the end, it was only used in the USA, and it completely incompatible with everyone else's mobile phones across the world. In the UK, we had TAX and eTax, which were the original analog phones, but started when Mercury 1-to-1 came out in the 90s and Orange came out in the 90s, we started to get GSM. And then eventually everything morphed onto GFM. See, GSM stands for the Global Standard for Mobile Phones, or Global Standard for Mobiles. And what it allows you to do, of course, is that if you have a phone, you can go to anywhere in the world and you can roam on their network. Now, there's several standards. GSM 800, there's GSM 1800, GSM 1900, all this kind of stuff. But the net result is, with a modern phone, you should be able to turn up anywhere in the world. It connects to a local network, and then it should work.
No, the thing is, this is the nerdiest conversation me and Tim. This is when Joy's nerd comes out. People don't realize I know these things too. I keep them in, but what's interesting about that is now though, like if you so it always went US Cellular, then it went Verizon. Like those were the two competitors that were CDMA now. But even if you have a CDMA phone now, most of them you can put a SIM card in and use it on towers and roam because there's like a dual thing now. But when I say it was a completely foreign concept to me, it was like until I graduated college, really. And a lot of people in Southwest Virginia, Tim, that's my witness, still have US Cellular for that reason.
Yeah, well, CDMA has been retired, and CDMA, as you say, didn't have a SIM card. It was serial number based.
Now it's different, but
yeah, but now all of these SIM cards, you know what SIM stands for?
No, I don't know that I do.
Subscriber Identity Module.
I mean, that makes sense because it's how you identify your account and you can switch it.
So most of the time you would get a physical SIM card that slots in your phone, but now all the networks are phasing SIM cards out to go to the eSIM standard, which is basically going back to how it was with CDMA, where it's really an electronic serial number that's posted to your handset.
Yeah, but like an IMEI, what is it? IMEI? Well, is that what it is?
Well, the IMEI is the International Mobile Electronic Identification Number, I think.
Okay, we've lost all the people, Tim. They're done with the cell phone.
Which is the unique number of the handset, and then the SIM is a separate number on top of that, which identifies it to you.
I find it very interesting, though, how CDMA popped up in certain areas and it didn't in others. I don't know why. I just don't get it.
It's because it worked better in rural areas because it was a higher power transmitter.
Okay, well, that's past what I knew, but Charlie probably could have told you that. Anyway, moral of the story is Joy did not know what GSM is till she moved to the West Coast. I had zero, I knew Tim, like it existed, but it was a foreign concept to me. Like it really was. And so now it's like everything has a SIM card, or as you said, now an eSIM card. But anyway.
And I will tell you, as somebody who activates phones on a regular basis for work, eSIMs are an absolute pain in the neck, and I wish they'd go back to the physical ones.
Because you could just physically stick it in there.
Easier to activate, work, swap them, easier. But anyway, that's progress, Joy. That's progress.
So whenever I was back in the day doing call center tech support, Tim knows that I did this. I was on the AT&T business line, which AT&T is obviously GSM. And so what was happening, though, is remember back in the day when they everybody had unlimited data, Tim, and then they took it all away from us and then they gave it all back.
Yeah.
Well, I was working during the time when they took it all away from everybody. And one popular problem that was happening with AT&T is people would swap between devices. But they didn't realize when they were swapping between devices and they were reactivating the new device, they would lose their unlimited data because they'd have to select a new plan.
Yeah.
So 2 gigs, 4 gigs, 6 gigs, whatever it was. I remember there was this couple, and I felt bad for them because they didn't know better. They didn't. But it also told them they could have read. So they were reactivating, they were putting a new SIM card in. And when they did that, it prompted them to set up a new plan. They put a 4 gig plan on their phone. They called me, and they're screaming, livid mad because they lost their unlimited. And at this point, they had just basically, Tim, taken all unlimited away. You just couldn't do it. It wasn't there. They just said, no more unlimited, right? And I literally got to the point where this man was screaming at me for probably a good 20 minutes about this. And I said, sir, there is physically no button on this computer I can click to give you your unlimited back. What would you like me to do?
Yeah, it's that's a problem. If you can't even get it overridden or anything, that's rough.
They just took it all away from everybody. Like, and there was just an awkward silence on the end of the phone, and I was like, I can send a ticket up and let the manager call you, but that's the extent of what I could do. But that was the dark times, Tim, when they took unlimited data away from everybody.
And now they let you have unlimited, but it's like unlimited, but if you use a lot, we'll cut you off or something. Yeah.
You get throttled to pennies. Anyway, back to music.
Yeah. Was it your turn next or my turn next?
What song were we?
Let me take the next one. Let me do that.
Go crazy, Tim. It's your topic. I have no clue.
Okay. So I'm going to go with one from the second album. And this is Will Powers and Kissing with Confidence. Now, had you heard that prior to listening to this?
Yes, but not something I heard very often. Very UK based song.
Well, I think it was actually a US song. So Will Powers was a stage name used by this celebrity photographer called Lynn Goldsmith. And she wanted to create a comedy self-help music album.
Interesting.
And then she released an album called Dancing for Mental Health.
Very to the point.
Okay. And the people on this album, it had Sting, Nile Rodgers, Todd Rundgren, Carly Simons on it. And in fact, this song has Carly Simon on it.
I'm looking at it right now, and I literally was like, oh, Nile Rodgers, Steve Woodward, and Carl Simon. Like, I was like, what? Like, that's so many people. I don't know. Like, I don't know why it wasn't more popular. Maybe it was produced in America, but it was just more popular in the UK. Like, I've heard it, but it's not something I've heard very often.
Yeah, it got to number 17 in the UK charts. Now, back in 83, if you got to number 17, that was still a big hit. Now, I mean, I could self-release something and get to number 17 and no one would ever see it.
I mean, top 20 back in the day was where you wanted to be. But I mean, anything Nile Rodgers plays on is just gold. We've talked about this.
Of course.
I mean, he's a godsend. I also I'm always worried that I'm going to turn on the news and he's going to have passed away, Tim. I'm not.
Well, let's not think about that because he's a legend. He's a musical legend.
Tim's like, we're not going to speak about it.
No, and he's a cancer survivor, and we hope that he's going to be rocking for many, many years.
Now, change the subject. Steve Woodward is an underrated artist.
Yeah, underrated. I mean, he was in Traffic. I mean, he had lots of other solo hits and stuff, but he's not someone that you really think about a great deal. I mean, he was in Blind Faith as well.
So he was a session artist too, though, Tim. Do you know about his session artist stuff? Like he was on the Jimi Hendrix Experience. He was on. He worked with B.B. King. Like, I only recently learned this because I was watching a documentary on him, and he was a huge session artist. Eric Clapton. He played with Eric Clapton. Nobody knows this.
Yeah,
maybe you know it. I didn't know it.
Well, as I said before, Blind Faith, the supergroup with Eric Clapton.
Yeah. Well, and then there's who else was there? I even saw Jimmy Buffett. He played with Jimmy Buffett. Like, there's just so many people. Joe Cocker. And I was like, why does nobody ever talk about Steve Winwood? What am I missing?
And Steve Winwood had an 80s pop career as well. Yeah. Roll With It and all that kind of stuff. Valerie.
Roll With It is one of my favorite songs, ever, of all time. I absolutely love Steve Winwood. But you just don't really hear much about him. Nobody really talks about him. He's just, I feel like he is one of those people that has been able to, and it could be on purpose. Maybe he's trying to fly under the, you know what I mean, the radar and live both lives. I don't know, but you just don't hear people talk about him.
He famously plays Hammond organ on that clip of While My Guitar Gently Weeps, which features Prince. You know the famous clip of Prince playing lead guitar? He is playing Hammond organ on that.
Huh. You know, I don't know if they think I knew that because I've watched that 1,000 times. We've discussed all of that, but I've never paid attention. Because, I mean, honestly, Higher Love is one of my all-time favorite songs. Roll With Me is one of my all-time favorite songs. So that's what I think of. But that makes sense. I don't know why. I feel like he's one of those people who might have been really talented as a musician, but for some reason they didn't have that it factor.
Yeah, maybe you're right. He's been in and around some amazing music. He's had a solo career. He's been in a number of bands. But yeah, you don't hear about him as much as you would an Eric Clapton or, I don't know, anyone from that era.
I mean, is he known to be a good guitarist? I have no idea.
I mean, he's known to be a okay guitar player, and he's probably known better as a keyboard player, Hammond organ player, than he is a guitar player.
I think he plays the drums, too.
Probably.
He's one of those people that's like multi-talented at everything, but nobody quite. But you know what's interesting? Maybe he's doing it on purpose, Tim. Maybe he wants the best of both worlds. He wants to be able to play with all these musicians, but still be able to go out and eat dinner without people hawking at him.
Maybe. But I think if I saw him out, I'd know who he was.
I don't think I would. He just looks like an average white guy with blonde hair. But good on you, Tim. Better you than me. So we legit didn't talk about the song at all. I don't even know how we got on to Steve Woodland. But anyway, moving on.
All right. Well, you pick a song.
I'm going to pick The Love Cats by The Cure.
Oh, I love this. I mean,
I do too.
The Cure are not necessarily a band that I really super like, but I'm a greatest hits fan of The Cure, and This is way up there. I like the song of theirs, Lullaby, which was a later song of theirs. But yeah, The Love Cats, fabulous.
Well, I feel like The Cure has like an underground cult following.
I think so.
I'm not one of them. If like the members of The Cure were walking past me, Tim, I'd be like, "Sup?" But I wouldn't know who they were. I really wouldn't. Obviously, I do know that's an English band. Tim's not going to correct me on this one. I really thought Richard Branson was American. No, you win some, you lose some. But this is such a cute, I don't know. It's just fun, honestly. That's all it is.
I like it. And it's a sort of song that would be played at a student disco in the 90s or something.
It really is. It's very 90s. When I was looking it up, like the pictures, like The Cure, like the album has like, it looks like people like cut pieces out of a magazine. It's very The Cure-esque 90s kind of pop hits. I don't know. I just don't know much about The Cure as a whole, but I really like this song.
Yeah, I like it too. I mean, there's a number. There's like Friday I'm in Love, and there's a few other Cure songs, but yeah, The Love Cats is way up there.
Yes, if you've never listened to The Cure, The Love Cats, we say give it a goog later.
Exactly. All right. Well, I tell you what, let's do one more each. I'll do one, and then you can do the closing one. So let me have a look through the list here. Men at Work and the song Down Under from the first album.
I knew that was coming. I mean, it's just, this is another one. Charlie makes me listen to Men at Work a lot. Very new wave, very pop rock. Almost to the point that, like, this song has become nauseating in a way. But it's wonderful in and of itself.
There was a time in the 80s, certainly in the UK, where in the UK we were made very aware of Australian culture, which is not necessarily something that we'd seen until that point. I mean, obviously people know Australia, but I mean, you had that film Crocodile Dundee came out, and then you had the band Men at Work come out with Down Under, and there was a few other things like that. And then Australian culture was like pushed into the forefront.
I guess I never really thought about that, but it makes sense. I mean, I can't think of a more classic song, though. I don't really know much about Men at Work outside of Down Under, and I think they did a version of Johnny Be Good.
They also did a song called Live It Up.
Oh, I do know that song. Were they like super popular in the UK for like 5 minutes and then they kind of died down? Because that's what I thought they did in America.
I mean, I think to some degree they're sort of one-hit wonder-ish. Yeah. But certainly Down Under is exactly what they're known for.
I find it very interesting, though, that you make a point. But this is one of those songs that I think gets resurgent periodically. Like, it'll be popular, you won't hear anything about, and then it'll be used in a movie or a reference to the UK, like some kangaroo movie or something, and then it becomes popular again. And then I feel like they probably make so much money off of this song because it's used anytime the UK is referenced. I'm not the UK, I'm sorry, Australia is referenced in any movie whatsoever, right? Like, exactly. I just feel like they probably didn't even have to produce another song.
Well, I think Colin Hay is the singer for Men at Work, and I think he probably wrote that. Yeah. And I think, and I know I've actually saw Colin Hay when I saw Ringo Starr, the Roanoke Civic Center, a few years ago. So I think he's probably living large on the legacy of Down Under and the other hits.
I feel like he is. I mean, I always wonder about that with one-hit wonders. Are they one-hit wonders by choice, or did they just say, "I made enough money, I'm done"?
No, I'd imagine that it just happened like that. but certainly during this era, if you sold a lot of records and if the song is ingrained in the culture like this is, you can live off it forever by licensing it to films and commercials and all that kind of stuff.
Fair. All right, Tim, I'm going to leave us with a classic that everybody knows, UK, American, everyone. There's 74 versions of this song. It's Red, Red Wine by UB40.
Absolutely. And do you know who wrote that?
No.
Neil Diamond.
Of course he did. That sounds like something he would do. Now that I hear that, that makes sense. It sums up like that kind of very fun 80s genre to me. And once again, a song that if you put it out there, Neil Diamond, while he's famous and has his own money, probably made billions off of this song because it's used in every movie, TV show, commercial, radio. Since the beginning of time. There's also like 47 versions of it. Like there's so many remakes of this song.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, as I said, that kind of UB40 reggae-ish sound, I don't know. But yeah, the remakes don't necessarily head into that territory, though.
Yeah, I think so. And but I will say, if you think of Red Red Wine, the UB40 version, that reggae kind of sound is what comes to mind. I don't think of anything else. And I've heard a lot of people talk about UB40 was very popular in England. Like I've heard people who are from England, and Tim can tell you that, been like, I've been to a UB40 concert. Like everybody knows who they are, partied with them, knew who they were.
Oh, they were huge. They had so many hits, and they famously did that duet with Chrissy Hynde, "I Got You, Babe." Yeah, it was obviously a cover, but.
Yes, Tim. But I don't know. I just felt like it's one of those bands that I feel like everybody from the UK has some association with. My closest thing is when I lived in Utah, Tim. This is completely not related to UB40 at all. But the band they use is from Utah. And when I lived in Utah, I swear to you, Tim, everybody who's ever lived in Utah claims they've either been to a party, been to a club, partied with them, knows their cousin. Like everybody is associated with that band. And Tim's friends that I've met from the UK, when they talk about UB40, I feel like it's the same. Like everybody's either been to one of their shows, been around them. The only other thing is Tim told me once, what's that guy with the mutton chops that you said you've hung out with it, everybody knew. Oh, what is his name? Oh my gosh. He had like the really intense sideburns. Dang it, Tim from the 80s. You said everybody knew him, and like you like literally went to a show with him. I'm not making this up.
I can't remember.
He sang that song about dating a girl. If she's poor, take her out.
Oh, Mungo Jerry.
Yes, that's the other one that like everybody in the UK knows.
Well, I told you he lives in Germany, and then when I went to stay with my uncle a few times, we drove through a town. He said, "Oh, Mungo Jerry lives in this town." But
didn't like some of your friends in the UK like play with him or something? Am I going crazy or did that come up?
No, you're probably right. I mean, all those people are musician types, so it doesn't surprise me.
That's what I heard. UB40 and Mungo Jerry. I don't know why, but I've heard them tell stories that like everybody knows those two people. Whether they were lying, I can't tell you. Maybe it just looks like a guy with mutton chops. For those who don't know, that's a word for sideburns. That's just what I was trying to go for. I don't know why they're called mutton chops.
I don't know. Well, they probably look like, mutton being like a tender cut of lamb, like a young lamb is mutton. And then chops, it's that kind of shape. So if you had a couple of like chops on your face, they look like mutton chops.
Do people in Britain eat mutton? Because that's not an American thing.
Yeah, people eat lamb and mutton and stuff. I never cared for lamb.
I wouldn't know what a mutton chop looked like, so I'll take Tim's word for it. And with that, that's where I leave the people. Me trying to play on guessing gang a Mungo Jerry. How simple was if you take her out for a date if she's poor? I just want everybody to know Tim got that. The reference, that song's really did not age well, by the way. If her daddy's rich, take her out for a spin. If her daddy's poor, just do what you will.
Yeah, and have a drink, have a drive. Come and see what you can find. Yeah, did not age well, Joy.
Did not age well at all. And that's where we'll leave it. All right, what do you have for the people, Tim?
Just be incredibly kind to everyone you meet.
All right. Bye.
Bye bye.